Welcome to This Explainer. Look, we've all seen the news lately, right? The massive national protests over the NEET paper leaks. Students and everyday citizens are out on the streets rightfully demanding some accountability. But what if I told you that these leaks are, well, they're really just a tiny crack on the surface? They're basically just a symptom of a multi-thousand crore underground industry. So today, we're going to stick strictly to the data and the source reports to figure out exactly how this corrupt medical seat mafia actually operates. So let's just dive right in and ask a super critical question. Are these recent exam paper leaks just a symptom of a much larger disease? When you really dig into the investigations, it becomes pretty obvious that the real villain here isn't just a handful of bad actors leaking a test paper. The actual culprit is a highly sophisticated, deeply corrupt medical education system that has, quite literally, commodified the dream of becoming a doctor. To understand how this whole machine is manipulated, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the doctor shortage crisis, then the medical seat bottleneck. After that, we're going to expose three very specific scams: rent a topper, quota forgery, and the watchdog sale. And finally, we'll talk about what it actually takes to fix this corrupt system. All right, Section 1, the doctor shortage crisis. We really have to start with the massive paradox sitting at the heart of this entire issue. The basic question is, does India actually have enough doctors to treat its population? And the answer you get, it totally depends on who you ask, because the data tells two wildly different stories. There is this stark, honestly crazy contrast between the official claims and the on-the-ground reality. The official numbers will tell you we have a solid ratio of 1.23 doctors for every 1,000 people. But they hit that number by counting practitioners of Ayurveda, homeopathy, yoga, and Unani. If you only count allopathic doctors, the ones formally trained to handle a sudden heart attack, perform surgery, or treat a critical emergency, India has a massive deficit. The real ratio collapses to just 0.7 to 0.8 per 1,000 people. Experts are sounding the alarm that just to prevent a massive healthcare crisis as the nation grows, we literally need an additional 2.8 million doctors. And guys, this problem compounds aggressively when you look at specialized care. Based on official estimates and the current rate we're graduating people, we are facing a timeline that is, frankly, terrifying. We won't have enough general surgeons to meet demand for another 34 years. And cardiologists, we won't have enough of them for a staggering 82 years. Just let that sink in. Which brings us to Section 2, the medical seat bottleneck. Logically, you'd think that a country this desperate for doctors should be doing absolutely everything in its power to train every single capable student, right? But instead of opening the floodgates, the system artificially chokes the supply. Let's look at how this bottleneck is actually created. Get this. In 2024 alone, out of more than 1.3 million students who successfully qualified for NEET, 1.2 million capable students were completely rejected. Why? Because there are not even 200,000 seats available in the whole country. That 1.2 million isn't just a statistic. That represents crushed dreams. These are students who were fully capable of becoming doctors, but were turned away just because the infrastructure refuses to make room for them. When we put our output on a global scale, the bottleneck becomes painfully obvious. India is currently producing just 4.1 medical graduates per 100,000 people. That's less than half of what the United States produces, which sits at 8.5. And it's a tiny, almost unbelievable fraction of a country like Denmark, which pumps out over 21. And somehow, it gets even worse at the finish line. Imagine a student who actually beats out millions of applicants, survives 5.5 grueling years of medical school, and finally graduates. Bam! Immediately, 33% of these highly trained doctors are eliminated from becoming specialists simply because the seats just do not exist. For every 3 doctors India trains, there are only 2 specialist seats waiting on the other side. All right, Section 3. Scam 1, rent-a-topper. This massive, entirely artificial gap between the supply of capable students and the demand for doctors has essentially created 3 distinct doors into medical college. You've got the merit door for the top rankers, you've got the private fee door for those with decent scores and, 50 lakhs to spare, and then there is a highly secretive third door run exclusively by the medical mafia. This third door, it doesn't ask for a scorecard. They just hand you a rate card. If you want an MBBS seat, the going black market rate is upwards of 1 crore rupees. If you're after a postgraduate or PG seat, you are looking at up to 3 or 4 crores. But wait, since seats are legally supposed to be allocated by merit rank, how on earth are they getting these seats to sell? Well, they're manufactured through a very specific, genius little loophole. Here is exactly how this loophole is exploited, step by step, in what's known as the rent-a-topper scam. First, agents approach a high-ranking student, a topper, who already has a secure government seat lined up. They pay this kid 5 to 15 lakhs just to apply for a private seat during the multi-round counseling process. Second, the topper basically holds that private seat hostage, freezing it so no genuinely deserving lower-ranked student can even touch it. Finally, right at the last second as the counseling rounds close, the topper drops the seat. It falls back to the college management, who then completely bypasses the merit list and sells that exact seat to a desperate, wealthy student for crores of rupees. Everyone gets a cut, and merit is completely thrown out the window. Section 4, Scam 2, Quota Forgery. Look, the rent-a-topper scheme is just the warm-up act in the Mafia's playbook. There is a second, arguably way more brazen scam, and it targets the seats specifically reserved by the government to help vulnerable or strategic groups. The Mafia has figured out how to perfectly exploit these quotas by forging identities right alongside the college management. The original purpose of these quotas was actually pretty noble, bringing in foreign NRI funding to subsidize the college, or helping the poorest, economically weaker section, or EWS, students in the country. But the Mafia reality? It's wild. You've got students who have literally never left their home state, suddenly presenting fake sponsorships from Dubai to claim NRI seats. Meanwhile, incredibly wealthy families are just buying fake income certificates to steal EWS seats meant for kids who can barely afford textbooks. The sheer volume of this fraud is absolutely staggering. Investigation reports have revealed that over 18,000 seats across India have been filled using forged NRI documents alone. In one documented case, a candidate paid 4.23 crores in cash for an MD seat under an EWS quota. I mean, you can't make this up. Seats meant to cross-subsidize education or lift people out of poverty are instead being auctioned off to the highest bidder in broad daylight. Moving on to Section 5, Scam 3, the watchdog sale. Now, listening to all of this, you might logically be screaming at your screen, where is the government watchdog during all of this? How are colleges getting away with institutional fraud on this scale? To answer that, we have to talk about the National Medical Commission, or the NMC. This is supposed to be the supreme authority in the country. Their main job as the watchdog is to conduct strict surprise inspections of medical colleges to ensure they actually have real faculty, proper infrastructure, and real patients in their hospitals so that students can, actually learn medicine safely. But according to massive CBI exposés, the so-called surprise element of these inspections was completely up for sale. Middlemen and insiders within the health ministry were allegedly leaking the exact dates and names of the inspectors directly to the colleges. With this advanced warning, over 40 medical colleges were caught staging elaborate, basically Oscar-worthy theatrical productions. They would literally hire actors to pose as fake professors for the day, and they'd fill completely empty hospital beds overnight with fake patients, all just to secure their NMC approvals. Finally, Section 6, Fixing the Corrupt System. So to recap, we have an artificial shortage, hijacked counseling, forged quotas, and a deeply compromised watchdog. Look, as long as a single medical seat is worth up to 4 crores on the black market, this business model of corruption is going to thrive. Which means if we want real change, we can't just punish a few individuals, we have to attack the system itself. We need permanent structural fixes, and the source material outlines 3 major ones. First, we need a single-match national algorithm, kind of like what the US uses. This assigns a seat permanently and completely kills the multiple rounds that allow the topper scam to even exist. Second, we have to implement automated online verification for quotas, meaning cross-checking EWS claims against actual text data and NRI claims against real immigration records with 0 human college clerks involved. And third, we need an independent regulator that is highly paid and totally insulated from governmental pressure, making them virtually immune to standard bribery. The fundamental takeaway of this entire crisis really boils down to this. You cannot take an honest person, put them in charge of a deeply corrupt, highly profitable machine, and expect them to magically fix it. Eventually, the machine will just grind them down. The incentive structures are way too warped. So as we watch the protests filling the streets and hear the loud calls for various officials to resign, we really have to pause and ask ourselves a much harder question. Are we just demanding a new face to manage the exact same broken problem? Or are we finally going to demand an entirely new machine? Think about that the next time you see a headline about a medical exam leak. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this gave you some real clarity on the incredible forces at play behind our medical education system.